Stories love having characters. Hot take, I know. They're really important. Look at the whales on Genshin Impact that love Klee, for example. Arlecchino, or Peruere, is an example of a sensational character within this game, but it wasn't always that way. Since characters are so important to their narratives, what happens when they, well, aren't so good? It's time to talk about the fourth of the Fatui Harbingers and the day she was fixed. Grab some raspberry Fanta, balemoon-branded fries if that exists, and get strapped in. Today we're discussing the day Arlecchino was fixed. Also, this is my opinion. This video will be structured as a history lesson. If you don't like that, either skip to version 4.6 or watch something that's in a different style, just a heads up. Now, within version 2.4, released on January 5th, Enkanomiya was subsequently released, though that's not what I'm concerned about, but rather a certain world quest released in this update. The quest, A Very Special Fortune Slip, serves as another extension of wrapping up Inazuma's Archon quests, showing more Fatui lore and going into more detail about how they were sent to Inazuma to help with things such as the Vision Hunt Decree. However, Arlecchino was mentioned multiple times, being described as her patience running out, with an intimidating aura of control. She's also described as a male named Lord Arlecchino, interestingly enough. Mentions of orphans also go through here, and this all helps to build certain bits of lore for the otherwise ambiguous Harbinger. Unfortunately, besides that, not much is mentioned. It's simply worth noting that this mysterious Arlecchino Harbinger has had an influence in Inazuma, and seems to be quite the intimidating individual. However, mysteriously, all content surrounding this figure in the lore would change for seemingly no reason in version 2.8. Well, that was partially a lie. There was a reason, but you wouldn't catch it if you only stuck to the game and none of the official media released by Hoyoverse, the creators of Genshin Impact. See, version 2.8 released on July 13th, 2022, with an interlude teaser trailer releasing just 2 days prior on the 11th. This interlude trailer finally introduced a face to adorn the title of The Knave, or Arlecchino. See, what the version 2.8 update did was change all masculine mentions of Arlecchino to feminine ones, naming her Lady Arlecchino instead of Lord Arlecchino, and changing all she and her uses into their male counterparts, because big whoop, the face shown 2 days prior was that of a female. A key point here is that Arlecchino's design is that of a black and white woman with red crosses on her otherwise dead eyes. It shoots a feeling of discomfort in anybody met with her presence, with her tone even being incredibly irritated and rebellious. The crosses in her eyes concluded this circle of characterization, giving a feeling of action and pursuit to lace her demeanor. The two Fatui in this world quest from Inazuma were afraid, and suddenly it was becoming a lot more obvious why. On top of this, this update introduced another thing. If you know Child, or Tartaglia, also known as the 11th of the Fatui Harbingers, you'd know he's playable with a bunch of voice lines. My personal favourite character also happens to have lines covering Scaramouche and La Signora, as they were both introduced as Harbingers in the game, though due to the update's release after the interlude teaser, the developers over at Hoyoverse decided to take this a step further, and drop voice lines for all Harbingers shown in the teaser, being all except one, and I have no idea who they are. I find it odd Dottore didn't have a voice line already, considering his presence in the manga back in 2018, but oh well. My point is, Arlecchino has a voice line about her, and you can just listen, okay?
I've got nothing against people who have their own agendas. I myself joined the Fatui to get more experience in combat. But I don't like her at all. If she stood to benefit from betraying others, she'd turn against the Tsaritsa in a heartbeat. There isn't a sane bone in her body.
He makes her sound bonkers and completely illogical. Not only does he outright call her insane, but he accuses her of being completely disloyal and easy to resort to betrayal. This is interesting, as technically the Fatui are antagonists, so an enemy of an enemy could be a friend, right? Well, no. As she's so heavily established to be not only intimidating but now even insane. It brings a level of interest both morally and narratively to the game. Now we're going to discuss another voice line. Let's go. As Chapter 3 of Genshin Impact's Archon quests wrapped up, the 24th of August, on the same year as version 2.8, brought a thrilling conclusion to the main performing antagonist's arc, causing Scaramouche, one of the Fatui Harbingers, to become an ally. Now, while deleting himself in this story may have made characters such as Child forget him completely, that doesn't mean he's forgotten his old colleagues. This includes Arlecchino, the Knave. Here, take a nice long listen to his voice line about her.
A wolf in sheep's clothing. To exert a higher level of control over people, she puts on a graceful and cordial front. Most of those who have seen her true crazy self have gone poof.
It goes a full step further to really set some fear into the listener. Unlike Child's more vague and definitely personal voice line, Scaramuche's, or technically the Wanderer's, is more objective, which makes sense for somebody like him. Instead of simply explaining his opinion, he states her behaviours, being that she puts on a cordial front to exert more control over others, matching with the Inazuman story quest, as well as being a wolf in sheep's clothing, with those that see her true self disappearing. This is incredibly intimidating, not exactly bringing anything new to the table, but instead embellishing existing knowledge with further context, in turn fleshing her out more as a character. Excluding Dottore, she's implied to be incredibly dangerous, but not malicious, as all we know is she has her own agendas. However, all of this would change in version 4.1. Wait, let's move back for a second. As I implied, I'd love to jump straight to version 4.1, but there's a multitude of very important facts I need to cover within this version first, as I did a pretty similar thing with version 2.8. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a teaser trailer involved with this one too, named The Final Feast. On July the 3rd, 2023, Fontaine's official teaser dropped, yet it was mainly focused around Arlecchino. She watched the performance of Lyney and Lynette, yet pushing them over as they're revealed to be cardboard cutouts later on. This could be seen many ways, whether it's as a symbol for their eventual betrayal, or more likely a symbol of Arlecchino's control. She ends the trailer, the camera circles around her. She is the focal point, the only one in the crowd. Arlecchino will be Fontaine's Fatui Harbinger. As expected, when jumping into the game on August 18th, there was no Arlecchino due to Fontaine still being in its early stages. However, it is learned that Lyney, Lynette and Fremine, who are all Fatui, have somebody they call father. This figure sounds incredibly intimidating, and while not easy to do, it was possible to connect the dots and assume that this person was Arlecchino herself. Both this, as well as the trailer, helps to really establish two different things, her control and her intimidation. These two things also show just how much power she really has, creating an incredibly scary character. If you go back to that Final Feast trailer, there's even direct dialogue from Arlecchino. Give it a good listen.
Very fun. But it's not enough. Let me make something clear. You think of yourselves as magicians, but when you're on the stage, you're first and foremost actors. Good actors hone their craft to mesmerize the whole crowd.
You can tell that she's angry, unsatisfied, and hungry for more, and with the context of a harbinger, you should know immediately that she will satiate this desire. However, there's a tiny glimmer of humanity in how her children describe her. Only time will tell how she turns out, however. On September 27th, finally, after 10 or so versions of teasing, the Harbinger finally appeared in the game. Meet Arlecchino.
I assume you see it the same way, Miss Furina?
Arlecchino is an incredibly intimidating character with a cordial front, as Scaramuche has said, demonstrating power and control over any situation she is involved in at all times. She is mentioned to be applying pressure to Neuvillette and Furina, being the highest figures within the nation of Fontaine. This is to free Child from the fortress of Meripede, which is somewhat like a prison. Due to this, you are sent on a voyage to figure out the whereabouts of the Harbinger. Unfortunately, that proves to be difficult, though fortunately you run into Arlecchino's children, who are doing something similar. As you continue searching for Child, Arlecchino hosts a meeting with Neuvillette and Furina, which shows just how powerful Arlecchino truly is in the way of control. She pushes, albeit passively aggressively, the two high figures of the nation, scaring Furina especially.
Oh, I'm not referring to when my children, Lyney and Lynette, were falsely accused by you. Please don't misunderstand.
Though she leaves, tension still fills the air, and the Baal mood of power continues to rise. Once the traveller has left the fortress of Meripede upon resolved disputes in the fortress, you have a personal meeting with the Harbinger herself. Here she does a similar thing, though bringing a feeling of humanity, as she shows genuine concern for what she states to be her nation, accusing Furina of ruling the nation poorly and seeming to have its best interest in mind. This shows Arlecchino as a humane yet suspicious individual. Soon afterwards, you participate in what Arlecchino refers to as idle gossip upon escorting her to the exit. This continues pushing away the feeling of a disconnect that Harbingers typically have, with Scaramouche showing very well how to keep a character emotionally distant while physically close in the inversion of Genesis Archon quest. In my opinion, this is the first of many flaws to come with her character, somewhat ruining how she is in the Archon quests, though for now, most of her screen time is well spent, granting a feeling of intimidating control and mystery, similar to Dottore, though more told and less shown, which is not necessarily bad and fits for a character such as Arlecchino. It at least fits the rebellious side of her shown within a Winter Night's Lazo. I do want to mention though that all of these good screen times and good scenes are only under the assumption that this will reach a climax in the next act of the story. You know how every nation, excluding Mondstadt, tends to have a boss fight with a Fatui Harbinger in the climax of the storyline? Or how nations such as Liyue and Inazuma have those alongside fighting godly beings of immense power? Well, while Fontaine has the latter, it lacks a Harbinger boss fight. Long gone are the days of antagonistic Harbingers, now with something else. Now, it is not bad to break a cycle or a formula, in fact I'm all for it. However, the way Arlecchino does it is not something that I personally approve of. Let me explain though. A bold statement with no explanation is like a random mention of Skibbity Toilet by someone with an abnormally low attention span. Within this last act of Fontaine's storyline, Arlecchino assists friends of the Traveller and gets Fatui to do things like help evacuate Poisson's citizens, as well as being there for Navia in general as she grieves. She then tells the Traveller to go to some ruins, only to figure out what the prophecy of Fontaine is, resulting in a whole bunch of stuff happening that isn't exactly, well, relevant to Arlecchino. The next time we see Arlecchino is all the way at the end of the act, where we ask her some questions before it's all over. That's pretty much it, if I remember correctly. Yeah. My main problem is not that Arlecchino is a human, as that's completely fine. Child is as well, and ironically Scaramouche is too. However, they're still Harbingers, and follow the formula of said Harbingers. Now, a lot of people don't like formulaic stuff in stories, but I'd argue that there are times where formulas are a good thing. It's why they exist. Take every JoJo's Bizarre Adventure opening having sound effects during its last playing, or the villain's interruptions within them. If not this, then look at the ever so formulaic nature of, Ninjago seasons. Yeah, each season is focused on one main cast member with a primary antagonist. They're general examples, but the point of this tangent is that formulas can be good. When you have 11 Harbingers from the same organisation that all have a shared goal to some extent in mind, it isn't bad to keep them very similar in a few fields. What Arlecchino does is break this and not for the better. Two problems: she's pointless, and she's not characterised properly. Arlecchino serves almost no purpose in the storyline of Fontaine. On top of this, anything she does do could easily be substituted for one of her children doing it instead, and it wouldn't be any worse. In fact, it could be better. On top of this, what happened to her being a traitor and a deceptive person? Her being insane? Her being fully driven by her own agendas? Well, the last one could arguably be confirmed by her difference when compared to her colleagues, but everything else is lacking. Childs, the secondary harbinger of the nation, is more relevant to the story by a mile. So yeah, Arlecchino isn't great. There was a history of hype built up around her, yet she was both different and pointless. She was not a harbinger and not herself. She was a fraud at this point, with her identity as a harbinger pushing her character further rather than her character pushing the organisation further, which was the point of a Fatui Harbinger, was it not? Well, thankfully, all of this was rectified 4 versions later, in version 4.6.
Shatter all shadows until it sets all ablaze. Or else, to the other end of light, lie still bleak shades.
I believe version 4.6 is deserving of an interlude due to just how hyped up this version was, as well as how effectively the media releases pushed Arlecchino as a character into the spotlight, relieving that hype built, satisfying the audience surrounding the character at the time. See, a lot of people still loved Arlecchino, which is fair enough, as well as thinking she was well written. This was also fun, and this resulted in a lot of hype for her return. Videos being made left and right. Here's an idea for you.
Let's break down exactly what's going on. Arlecchino.
I'd imagine after most of us watched that animated short, also
Alright, so we got the version 4.6 special program. I just finished watching.
Lore recaps were going ham around this time. I was even creating a video on how this version could fix her, and unlike every other 4th entry sequel to cartoon movies that have dropped this year, this sequel to Arlecchino's saga seemed to be going well. Not only was her association with the Crimson Moon being made more publicly known, creating more intrigue around her character, showing just how relevant she truly was, but an animated short fully centered around her would go on to release.
You were born into this world all alone. But here in the House of the Hearth, you will grow up to be strong. Your goal is to learn, to compete, to defeat all your brothers and sisters in battle, and become king.
Titled The Song Burning in the Embers, which even got its track released independently. This was not a common thing for most music by Hoyo Mix, with some of the other only songs released as singles being things such as La Vaguelette, and the song behind the newer animated short about the traveller and their sibling. Ignoring the relevance of this short that was released on April the 17th of 2024, it kicks right off the bat by showing us Arlecchino in her childhood, fleshing out how the House of the Hearth, which is the orphanage she owns, used to be. The old Arlecchino, Crusabina, was incredibly apathetic towards her children, with even her own biological child being made as an example of how little prejudice she had for her many children, forcing her child's best friend, Arlecchino, or at this point, Peruere, to kill her. Peruere went on to fight Crusabina herself, winning as a result of a mysterious curse that had been established since the beginning of the short as a result of her being a descendant of the Crimson Moon bloodline. Peruere was swiftly imprisoned, becoming greatly known throughout the Fatui as the person who killed the 4th of the Fatui Harbingers, eventually being let free by the higher-ups, becoming the new Harbinger known as the... well, I'll let the video speak for itself.
I hereby pardon your crimes and bestow upon you a new name. This title and its legacy of bloodshed are now yours to bear, my poor, mad, cursed knave.
This very well established further just how screwed up Arlecchino is, yet also establishing humanity within her. This is exactly how a Harbinger should be handled, and this quality of characterization only continued by other forms of media such as the version trailer, collected miscellany, or character demo. It was safe to say that Arlecchino was ultimately terrifying as a character, and only one thing was left to remain, her quest in-game. Finally, the day Arlecchino was fixed. On April 24th, 2024, players of Genshin Impact logged in to see multiple new things. A new way to play, a new quest, a new event, and even a new boss fight. These all had one thing in common though, of course. They were Arlecchino's. You could fight her, fight with her, and fight for her, if you were that addicted to gambling and didn't mind her incredibly short wingspan time. However, of course, if you couldn't tell by the rest of this video, we're focusing on narrative. Let's get to it. Arlecchino, of course, like I mentioned, became a playable character. Being 5 stars, she naturally got a story quest with her like the other ones, excluding characters such as Wanderer, Shenhe, and others. While I think it could have been a part of the interlude chapter, I won't go on too much of a tangent, and simply explain the quest. Just like our Fatui were helping to rebuild Poisson during version 4.2, the House of the Hearth, being the orphanage of Fatui members, are now residing there for the time being. Unfortunately for them, it seems that there's a member of this orphanage going around the place that doesn't actually belong there, causing Arlecchino to command for this child to be brought forth immediately upon first sighting. Partnering up with Lenny, Lynette, and Fremine, you meet this child, going on to realise that they're an orphan like any other, though with an unnatural demeanour, as if they're not really completely there, if that makes any sense. There are also no records of this individual, as the group goes on to in turn realise with this girl named Clervy. While the group continues to try and figure out what is exactly going on, the traveller must distract Arlecchino, who coincidentally seems to be conversing with the child about a Fatui project. While the first distraction works, the second doesn't, with Arlecchino nonchalantly mentioning the traveller's desire to divert her eyes away from the rebellion against her. She does what she does best, however, being intimidating yet dishonest and confusing, simply asking the traveller to meet her at the court of Fontaine, if they know what's best for them. There were even recurring elements of mystery with what seemed to be assassinations of the previous orphans of the House of the Hearth, causing Arlecchino to be more scary, and verifying Scaramouche's statements on her. What this scene of her knowing accomplishes, however, is multiple things that the Fontaine Archon quests lacked, being a sense of control, relevance, and intimidation. While she always created tension by being there, this was only because of our knowledge of her, and that knowledge never really led anywhere until now. Finally, Arlecchino is the villain of the story, ironically being her own. There's even small demonstrations of her powers, which were never really shown throughout those Archon quests either. Also, forgot to mention, her conversation with Child helps bring her more humanity.
Just imagine. Tusser becomes obsessed with plucking out strands from the rooster's mustache, or Tonya decides to dye her hair 42 different colors.
Okay. I get the picture.
There are small hints of confusing morality that diverge from Arlecchino's demeanour, even seeming more disconnected than ever from everything. She seeks punishment of her traitors, but from a perspective of necessity rather than personality, as if it is in no way a desire of hers, which is somewhat nice. This is how she is done right, showing humanity and rationality, yet still being irrational, threatening and overall antagonistic. She also claims that she enjoys when others misinterpret her or have misconceptions of her, which sort of helps justify her demeanour in the quests earlier, though it still irritates me of course, and I wish she was handled differently. Over time, this all bubbles to a climax where she desires to handle Clervy, who was actually her best friend from her childhood that she had killed this whole time, being a ghost of the past that cannot physically register the present, forgetting everything each morning when the sun rises. However, there are bigger fish to fry, with Arlecchino desiring to test Linny, Lynette and Fremine as a last-second change to the rules. If they can defeat her in battle, or even put up a fight, she'll forgive them completely. The Traveler joins in, and Arlecchino is fine with it. This is the official boss fight with the fourth of the Fatui Harbingers, the Knave, being in a story quest of all things, for the first time ever.
I'll allow it. We do have a ready-made dueling ring at our disposal, after all. All I would advise is this. Keep a firm grasp on your weapon, and give it your all. Any less.
The fight is incredibly intense, going back to push her inhumane insanity that has been built up for years as she seemingly apathetically attacks her children with various attacks, and whenever she fails to predict anything, she brushes off their attacks in return. The Traveler is the only one capable of doing anything really powerful or relevant or even impactful, but here is when one of the coolest things ever happens. If you know how other Harbinger boss fights have gone down, you'll love this. Watch.
Made it out, did you? You're stronger than I expected.
A crimson moon? I can't move.
Do you see how the Traveler is defeated? Not even in a traditional way, as if her aura alone is enough to cause him to completely lose all power in every way, finally doing what I've been waiting for, making Arlecchino a villain. This allows her to break the formula enough to be awesome, but stick to it well enough to be, well, a Harbinger. After her victory, Arlecchino reminds her children that it is time for their punishment, where instead of being assassinated, it turns out that they have the option to forget all their memories and live out their lives completely. This was shown when one of the older members was spotted in the court while Arlecchino and the Traveler visited, where that guy was selling newspapers. Arlecchino brought multiple of them, making him some money and being some of the shown humanity I was speaking of. This takes the children by surprise, her stating that while the old Arlecchino, Crucibina, did indeed do this, Peruere wouldn't. Typically it just happens to them, but due to Linny's courage to fight with his siblings in order to protect the other children from Arlecchino's wrath, they were granted a choice, choosing to stay in the end. Finally, later on, as this battle happened throughout the night, Clervy and Peruere have one last moment together, where Clervy admires just how much she's grown up, as well as how well she did accomplishing their goal of making the house safe, and significantly better than Crucibina ever did.
Do mothers usually argue with their daughters? I heard that in Snezhnaya, colored light dances in the sky at night. When we're grown up, shall we go see it together?
While Clervy was too weak to accomplish the goal due to her blood relation to Crucibina as her mother, Peruere could do so, and did as shown in the animated short. This honestly got me even feeling emotional, with a clear care shown. Paimon even tells Clervy of their stories travelling across the nations. However, despite this, Arlecchino did have to end this little ghost wandering, stating that she would have forgotten anyway.
Still, yourself. Goodbye.
May we meet again someday.
This quest is perfect, and I hope my recap did it enough justice to see why. See, Arlecchino, like I mentioned earlier on, fell into a case of the game telling us instead of showing us what made her Arlecchino. However, in this quest, that all changes, showing us just what makes people go poof, showing us just how powerful and controlling she can be, as well as who she is as a person. Much like the other Harbingers, Arlecchino finally has an identity that is known to us on a deeper level, while also being able to be a Harbinger. The fourth at that. This was definitely the day that Arlecchino was fixed, telling a powerful story, introducing a powerful character properly, and setting up more powerful stories to come. As a little conclusion, I'd like to just say, due to the video's historical nature, that more history can still be written. Arlecchino could show up at any point due to her clear, albeit not so permanent, alliance with the Traveler. She is willing to make compromises to maintain this after all, so meeting with her in Snezhnaya is almost guaranteed in my opinion, as well as maybe seeing her in or about Khaenr'iah due to her nature as a descendant of the Crimson Moon bloodline. Arlecchino was cool, and I've grown to really love her as a character, which I ironically have with every Fatui Harbinger. Besides La Signora, she's just, well, good in my opinion. I initially thought Arlecchino would be the Signora of the second half of the story, but this has shown otherwise, and I'm happy to say that Arlecchino is amazing and she's fixed now. Peace out, gang. Hope you enjoyed this very experimental piece of content.